Can you put a price on life? That's what some fear the Eames Bradley report on dealing with our past will do this week, with a proposal that next of kin bereaved through the Troubles should receive a £12,000 payment. With me, our Victims Commissioner, Patricia McBride, and the DUP's Junior Minister, Jeffrey Donaldson. You're both very welcome. Patricia McBride, £12,000 for the bereaved. Is this not just putting a price on life? Is this not blood money?
I think the fundamental problem that I have going into this is that the recommendation that we assume that the Consultative Group is going to make, that this payment will be made, is being viewed in isolation from their entire report. What I'm looking to see on Wednesday is how this acknowledgement payment fits into a programme of work that will address the causes, nature and effect of the conflict in our community. And I think that that's only one element of it, and without doubt it has been a very, very contentious element. You know, we do have issues at looking on how that will address need, ensuring that its target, that the needs of victims and survivors are met, not just through programmes that are developed out of the Consultative Group in the past, but by programmes that are already entrained through the Commission.
Does it have any merit?
Absolutely, I do believe it does have merit, and if you look at international examples, it's not uncommon that during peace-building processes and through truth recovery processes that reparations are paid to victims and survivors of the conflict. Okay. So it's not without precedent in society as a whole.
Well, Jeffrey Donaldson, what's your key objection?
Well, I have read the report, Jim, so I can comment from a perspective of looking at this holistically, and I am very concerned. I'm very concerned about the nature of this payment. It is not that there aren't people out there who could do with financial support. There certainly are. But the payment is described in the report as a recognition payment. And I just have a fundamental problem with a proposal that equates, for example, the Shankill butchers with their victims, or the Shankill bomber with his victims. Innocent people who were just out doing ordinary, everyday things, murdered in cold blood by terrorists. And I have to tell you, I've talked to a lot of victims and families over the last 48 hours, and they're appalled by this. There is a deep sense of anger out there about this. People feel it is morally indefensible to equate an innocent victim with someone who went out deliberately to take the life of another person. I just don't see how we can do that and say that there is an equivalence there. I don't believe there is.
But the payment is going to the bereaved families, and surely one mother's pain is the same whether her son was an RUC officer or an IRA member. For instance, Patricia McBride's brother was an IRA man, shot by the SAS. What would you say to her?
Well, this is supposedly about recognition. And I don't think that you can state that it is right to recognise that someone who committed murder, someone who was engaged in a campaign of terrorism, is to be equated with people who, for example, in the case of the Le Mans, were simply out for the night at an event and were murdered in cold blood. You simply can't do that. I recognise no one has a monopoly on pain and suffering, but this is about recognition, and I think that that people who were on the receiving end of terrorist violence find it deeply offensive that they are now being placed in the same category as those who caused their hurt and pain.
Well, how would you persuade someone like Jeffrey Donaldson that your pain is equally valid?
Well, I'm not interested in having a personal discussion about my family's circumstances, but what I will say is that there is already an equality here in the sense of all of those 3,800 people are equal in the fact that they are all dead. And the legacy of the conflict is that the families have been left behind to deal with the consequences of that, both practical, emotional, psychological, physical. And we're also looking at a situation where we're excluding a huge number of people, over some estimates up to 40,000 people who have been physically injured as a result of this conflict. So we can't lose sight of those individuals.
Is part of the problem here just simply that the whole process is muddy? The Eames-Bradley Commission is reporting to the British Government. You report to the Office of First and Deputy First Minister. We've got 4 victims commissioners because we couldn't agree on one, and we don't even have a definition of what a victim is.
Well, we do have a definition of what a victim is. It's
Agreed.
enshrined in legislation. But as always, that is contentious, and we have to acknowledge that it is. And my colleagues and I operate on the basis that individuals and organisations that we meet where we can identify that there is a need, that is who we, in a practical sense, treat as victims and survivors of the conflict. But yes, it is muddy. But fundamentally, I think what we all agree on is, and that goes right across the political spectrum, is that we have to develop mechanisms for dealing with the causes, nature and extent of the conflict. OK,
I'm sorry that time is against us, but Geoffrey Donaldson, just 2 other quick issues. Respond to Sammy Wilson's suggestion there that Northern Ireland workers should get preference over foreign workers.
Well, let me just say before I do that, Jim, that these proposals are going nowhere fast because we will have a veto and thankfully we're no longer in the era of direct rule. The Assembly, the First Minister will have to look at these and agree these proposals. We're simply not going to do that on the basis that we have read in this report. In relation to what Sammy said, look, we're in an economic downturn. We have many people who are now unemployed. It's happening in my own constituency. We've seen a huge increase in recent months in the number of people who are reporting as unemployed. And I think Sammy has a fair point. When we were on the up economically, we had a lot of migrant workers who were coming in to take up jobs that local people couldn't take up. But that situation is changing. We have to reflect that reality. We're not talking about discrimination. We're talking about economic reality.
OK. Sorry, I have no more time for the discussion, but thank you both very much indeed.